different for every brand, the ratio. But if you're not bringing in enough net new customers per month, then 3 months from then, you're going to be just hemorrhaging money. But at the same time, it costs money to be acquiring these net new customers. So you're kind of burning cash up front. You have to look at the effect over 30, 60, 90, 120 days.
Welcome to the Growth Mavericks podcast, where we know that entrepreneurship isn't just about strategy. It's about stamina. It's about disrupting your default and getting comfortable being uncomfortable so you don't burn out before you break through. I'm your host, Adam Callinan. Let's get to work. Our conversation today is with Kevin Wohlman. Kevin is the founder of Southern Scholar. It is a premium sock brand that he started in 2015 after quitting a job at a Big Four accounting firm. He is the consummate entrepreneur, and we go pretty far down this rabbit hole, frankly, because I'm fascinated with it. He was one of those kids that was like gathering and reselling candy to other kids in elementary school based on time and demand after Halloween. He was flipping concert tickets. He was printing t-shirts and started a t-shirt company that he ran like into college. I just think that's super interesting, frankly, because that is not how I am wired, and it's not how I found my way into startups and entrepreneurship. We talk about scaling that business without cash and capital, so doing it lean and bootstrapped, as well as then doing it after raising some money and how that changed. We talk about some vanity metrics that I always think are really important to be real and honest about, and how chasing some vanity metrics like top line revenue, almost hammered the business and took it down. We also talk about some of the things that he has done to be and remain resilient, and have a little bit of a session in the look back of when he was at his highest peak performance, basically, and the things that he had changed in his life to get there. So we cover a lot of ground, but I think this is a great example conversation of a really strong e-commerce business and a really strong e-commerce operator, and a lot to be learned here. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Kevin Wohlman. So you and I met a month or two ago online and had a couple of chats, and I'm fairly fascinated by the concept of building online business around something that seems, at least at face value, to be relatively simple, and that is socks.
Sure.
Am I like out of my mind? Is it really not that simple?
I tell people all the time, like, it's incredibly difficult and wildly simple at the same time. I kind of picked the product category for that reason, an easy and cheaper entry into the menswear space than what I originally wanted to do, which was bespoke suiting. And I kind of was able to build what I wanted off of that, single hero product, more or less. I mean, we have 200 plus SKUs, but at the end of the day, it's all our, signature blend dress sock. So a lot of design variants, but it's not like we're running, 150 SKUs that are different products, and then, variances on top of that as far as style and design goes. So simple business, very difficult at the same time.
So when Southern Scholar, like the concept for the business came up, what were you doing before this?
So I had interned at a Big Four accounting firm for 3 summers when I was in college, and I knew that was not a long-term route for me, but they paid quite well for a 19-year-old. So I continued those internships. They offered me the full-time gig after the 3 internships. And the way that world kind of works is you go back to school, you get your master's in tax or audit, you take your CPA exams, and then you continue, more or less for life, or at least that's their hope.
Yeah.
I had no intention of doing that. I had been an entrepreneur my whole life. I had started a company when I was, 13, 14 years old, ran it until I was 22. And so I knew I wanted to start something of my own, and I had kind of talked to my parents about that, and my dad's response was like, well, what do you have experience in to start a business? You might as well continue to pursue this accounting degree, because I had wanted to switch to, my school actually offered an entrepreneurship program as a focus of the marketing school, or of the marketing program. And he was like, continue on with the accounting thing. You're good at it. You're making decent money. And then later on, once you have some experience and some stuff, you can see if you want to start something. So I went back to school. I graduated with my accounting degree in your normal 4, but instead of going back and getting my master's in something I had no intention in pursuing long term, my I went to Arizona State, WP Carey School of Business, and they had just transitioned that entrepreneurship program from a focus of the marketing degree to its own degree. And because I was kind of an entrepreneur and knew this is what I wanted to do, I was taking entrepreneurship classes as my electives all through my business degree instead of all kind of the bullshit classes. And so when they made that entrepreneurship program its own degree, I was like 12 or 16 credits away from graduating with it. So funny enough, I finished that program in 1 year, and I mean, I had 3-4 classes a semester for that entire year. I graduated at the end of that year, and in the graduation book, I am the only name under the entrepreneurship program because nobody else could have possibly finished it already, right?
That's awesome.
So kind of funny, but I ended up taking that offer at the accounting firm, and I think I was about 7 days into that job when I noticed that everybody in my office was wearing some sort of pattern dress sock to kind of show a bit of style. The business casual dress code had shifted quite a bit. Nobody's wearing ties, pocket squares. You're hardly ever wearing a suit or a jacket. So most guys are in blue trousers, white button up, brown Oxfords, and throwing, some orange and black camouflage socks or pink lightning bolt socks to show a little bit of style or individuality or whatever. And I just thought, those things don't look very good. They're not very professional. I too was shopping for pattern dress socks, and I was walking to work at the time about a mile each way, and I'd be running through a pair of socks after 2 wears. They'd be falling down my leg all day at work. I noticed other people in my office, stopping in the hallway to bend down and pull their socks back up. And so just kind of a light bulb dung and said, you want to get into the menswear space, you want to start your own thing, maybe this is a good starting point. And then just kind of started literally 1 week into that job, started working nights and weekends, building this, and I launched it and quit my job a year later. Well, I take that back. I quit my job a year later and launched it about 5 months after that.
Amazing. So what year was that roughly?
I launched the business in November of 15. I started my full-time job at the Big Four firm in July of 14 and quit in July of 15. So I was building it,
Nice.
on the side nights and weekends for a year, and then quit my job to really get it launched before the holidays. And we launched it middle of November of 15. I say we. I always say we. It's me.
Yeah. The one-man show early on.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Let's go back. You said something that I also think is actually quite fascinating because I was not this kid. You were running a business when you were 13. What was that? Let's talk about that.
It was a t-shirt company.
Okay.
So I was a big skateboarder. I was very good compared to people that were actually good. I was obviously better than people that didn't skateboard often.
But you were doing it a lot. Yeah.
I was doing it nonstop. It's all I did. And I lived in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's 110 degrees in the summer. I'm skateboarding 2 miles to a bus stop, to drive 40 minutes to a skate park, to skate for 9 hours, to get back on the bus, to go home, to skate another 2 miles home every single day of summer. I was going to the skate park after school every day. Just all I really did. And I always kind of had that entrepreneurial bug. And so I found this clothing company I really liked. I started wearing it. Everybody at my school, started wearing it as well. And I'm not saying I started that trend. I'm just saying that brand got popular at the same time I discovered them. And I hated showing up to school wearing the same thing as somebody else. So I started designing my own t-shirts and hoodies and whatnot and wearing them to school. And the whole point was for me to have something that nobody else had. And then all of a sudden, all these people are asking me, where did I get it? Where can they get one? Blah, blah, blah. And I thought, maybe there's a business here. So I started a company called ITP Co., Increase the Peace Company, and started selling t-shirts at school and hoodies. And eventually it kind of grew to other schools. I never really took that, I call that a business. It wasn't so much a company as it was, a little side business, but
it's great.
Did pretty well for a high schooler. Made a few grand a month and eventually transitioned, still doing that, but also started doing t-shirts for, big football games at my school. Friends of mine that had started bands, was doing all their merch. And then in college transitioned to intramural teams and fraternities and sororities and, bands and rappers and things like that at my school. So kind of pivoted it a little bit and probably stopped doing that when I was about 21, 22.
How are you distributing product at the age of 14 to other schools? Like you weren't selling it online, really?
No. So I tried to get an online store going, and at that point, I don't even think I knew what Shopify was. I can't remember what platform.
I don't think it might not have existed. I mean, what year was this? This would have been like 2000. 2005, 7?
Let's see. I was in high school from 2005 to 2009. So yeah, I
Okay.
mean 2005-ish.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what the platform was I was trying to use, but long story short, my dad basically said, since you're under 18, the liability would fall on me if, something were to happen. So I didn't get to push online, which doing what I'm doing now, that would have been some great experience back then.
Yeah,
But,
early
I figured
days.
it out later in life. But mainly it was just, friends of mine at other schools or friends of friends that were, they'd give my number, they'd text me and ask, and I would drive to their high school after school and meet them and drop off shirts, or have
Amazing.
a friend, if I was not 16 yet, go and do the same thing. I was packing my backpack with shirts, taking the bus to school and getting rid of them that way, selling them at football games. It was very disorganized. It was just somebody asked and I'd find a way to get them a shirt.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was definitely not that kid. I hear these stories of the kids that are like 6 years old running around the neighborhood selling rocks wrapped in cellophane, and they have like a whole grip of neighborhood kids doing deals and doing all this stuff. And I always think that is so fascinating to just to be wired like that so young. Because again, I was not wired like that. I was into science and sports and being a nerd.
When I was in middle school, I would go trick-or-treating, and the goal was to get as much candy as I could possibly get, but it wasn't for me. I would wait 2 months until all my friends, the whole school had eaten all theirs, and then I'd start bringing bags to school and selling candy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that never crossed my mind. We just hammered it all. Yeah.
We used to have this fundraiser at my schools for band and orchestra, and everybody was required to take one of those, and they'd give you this cardboard briefcase, and it had like 4 or 5 pieces of 5 different types of candy. Everybody got the same candy. And I realized after the first fundraiser that 2 of the 5 pieces of candy were by far the most popular. So the next time we did it, day 1, I went to everybody in my class and said, hey, for your sour Skittles and your Shock Tarts, for 1 of each, I'll give you 2 of any other piece you want. And did this whole trade until I monopolized the market of the 2 popular pieces. Then I would sell them for $5 a piece. I would pocket the $4 difference, and then I would still win the competition, turning in, all of your fundraise money.
That's awesome.
So I've kind of always had the little thing. I mean, in college, I flipped concert tickets. I've done all sorts of things.
Yeah, that creates such an incredible sort of like baseline of experience for startups. Obviously just kind of been like mentally hacking down that road for such a long time. So you fast forward, side note, I was born and raised in Flagstaff. I didn't realize you were from Phoenix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I figured
Nice.
I incorrectly assumed with the Southern Scholar concept that you were a Southern guy, but that's awesome.
Yeah. So my mom's whole side of the family was from Texas. Some of them still live here.
Cool.
So I moved out here right after college, but lived in Phoenix, Arizona for 15 years.
Awesome. I went to U of A. We don't need to talk about that though.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's University of Arizona for you non-Arizona people.
Yeah.
So you start Southern Scholar, you're working a job, you spend a year doing both. What I often see in super early stage companies that it takes a certain amount of time. Rarely does it happen really fast that you get this sort of first inflection point where it goes from being like a side project that you're hacking together on the weekends and in your spare time or whatever to you sort of have like a holy shit moment where it goes from being nothing to being something. Did you have that?
Yeah.
And if so, what was that like?
Not that early.
Yeah, I know. Mine were never that early. For Bottle Keeper, it took a freaking year.
So what I was doing at this firm, I mean, it was 80+ hour weeks year round. So there wasn't much time, nights and weekends, to be plugging away. I mean, I was working 7 days a week. I was working till 11 p.m. midnight on Friday and Saturday nights at the accounting firm. So the time outside of that was limited to build a company. But it's just my personality. I just never had a doubt that I was going to make this work. And that might sound arrogant. I don't know. It's just kind of how I'm wired, that like, if you work hard enough, if you don't give up, if you can problem solve, like, you're going to be fine. And at that time I was living with my brother, and he saw like how much I was working. He's a few years older than me, or a couple years older than me. He saw how hard I was working. He saw how hard I believed. And we had a conversation one night that was like, hey, I really need to get this launched before the holidays. That could be a huge, liftoff point for a new brand to launch in a busy, gifting time of year. This is before I even realized how big Q4 was for direct consumer brands. Otherwise I would have launched in October.
Yeah.
And he basically was like, look, man, he's like, you're never gonna you're never going to be able to do this without being able to focus on it 100%. So we worked up a little deal for me to borrow some money from him, basically enough to cover my rent for, I forget if it was 4 or 6 months, to try and get this thing launched by November. I just went full bore, worked on this thing nonstop. The week that I quit the Friday that I left my job for good, I flew to Vegas with my brother and my aunts and uncles, celebrated, landed back in Dallas late Sunday night, woke up at like 6 a.m. Monday morning with this tiny little desk and laptop in my room, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, with boxes of socks that I didn't know how I was going to get rid of. Because to produce a textile product, you have to hit certain minimums per style. And we had 0 customers at this point. So I'm looking at, a year plus worth of inventory in my bedroom and this tiny little desk. And I'm just like, all right, let's go. Got to make this work at this point. You got to pay your brother back somehow. The launch day was pretty promising, but, at that point, the business is so small and I'm so gung-ho about it that I immediately jump into customer analytics and look, and there's maybe 2 names of all the orders from November 15th to December 1 that were not friends or family. So, it was kind of, sweet. People are supporting me, but also like, this isn't
problem.
This isn't sustainable. Yeah. But, again, I just never had a doubt that I was going to make it work. So I just dove head first, and that was 10 years ago. This November will be our 10-year anniversary. So the inflection point didn't come until after I raised capital in 2018, probably. It's hard to look back because right now, like, the only inflection point I can really think of is the one that happened 6 months ago. But realistically, there's been 10 of them along the way.
For sure.
They just get kind of washed out by the most recent one. But there was some sort of inflection point between 2015 and 2018 where I was confident I could raise capital, that I had enough steam and enough, proof that this was going to work. And then after raising capital and having a bit of a marketing budget, because we didn't know paid media until we raised capital, then we kind of had a little bit of success with paid media, and, we're starting to double year over year and triple year over year. And that was inflection point number 2. And then after that, it's me kind of learning more and more about the business and what does matter, what my time should be spent on, what it shouldn't be spent on, what's kind of vanity metrics, what's real metrics. That's inflection point number 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever. And here we are now.
What happened 6 months ago?
I took a step back from my normal kind of day-to-day, which was just get on the laptop and do as much as I can and as much time as I have, and then do it all over again the next day, and just kind of looked at it from a high level. I kind of thought to myself, and this is really funny, and I don't want this, I hope this doesn't sound bad, but when people come to me for help with their businesses, I'm like so clear-minded. Give me 20 minutes of a conversation and I've got so much valuable insight for you. I've got actionable items. I'm more than happy to jump into your analytics and dive deep and find opportunity. But when it's your own brand that you are so like wrapped up and intertwined in for a decade, it's really hard to like take that step back and think about the one thing that's most important right now without thinking about, once that's done, then it's da-da-da-da-da-da, or in order to get that done, it's da-da-da-da-da, right? When it's somebody else's business, you can. And so I was helping a few different friends of mine that wanted to start their own businesses, some in direct consumer, some in, YouTube yoga channels, like all sorts of different things. And there was this common theme of take a step back, look at things from a high level instead of the nitty gritty and deep diving into the data and make a logical decision. And so I did that for my own business. And the decision that was made was, hey, we're growing fast. We're doubling revenue at least year over year, but we're still kind of struggling with cash flow. We're still having to borrow. We're taking out these credit lines and Shopify loans that are crazy high interest when you're a growing brand, right? You're paying them back in 90 days.
Yeah.
They're designed to be paid back in 90 days or less.
Yeah.
So then you take that step back, you look at the APR you're paying and you're like, holy shit, like I'm just burning money.
Yeah.
To have budget, to advertise, to make more money, to pay back this loan. So, around that same time or a little bit earlier than that, the valuation process on direct consumer brands had shifted dramatically as well. Before it was, blank X revenue. Now it's EBITDA. So we just kind of made that transition, that shift into let's slow down growth a little bit. Let's clean up our books and let's focus on profit and cash flow. And it's only been 6 months or so, but it's been a game changer.
Yeah. We got really lucky in timing. I generally think, there's a lot of luck that has to happen inside of a like operating business, particularly an early stage one. But generally when you look back, luck has to do with timing most of the time.
Yeah.
And we got really lucky with Bottle Keeper when we got acquired, because it was in 2021 when it was the company, we got acquired by private equity and got positioned with Arctic Outdoors. And the private equity group that acquired us, called Windpoint Partners, the first 3 or 4 meetings that we had with them, and it was like their full team, the chairmans of the boards, the heads of this, the heads of everything. We probably had 5 or 6 hours worth of meetings with them, and not one time did they ask us what our revenue was. Not once. They didn't care if we were profitable. They just wanted to know, did we have other investors, and talk about IP and brand. It was fascinating. Obviously that changed dramatically.
Right.
Pretty sure, within a year or 2 of that, the world had shifted.
And what was their strategy, to roll it up into other things they had?
Yeah, it was sort of 2-part. They had just acquired Arctic Outdoors 6 months before us, which is a bigger company. Arctic Outdoors, for anyone that doesn't know, they're a lot different now, so I feel comfortable saying this. Their business model was largely built on just sort of doing what Yeti does at a lower price point.
Yeah.
And much of their revenue was built on drafting Yeti doing exactly that. And then when Windpoint bought them, they put in a new executive team, which included a new CEO named Bill Pond, who was epic. And they went down a completely different strategy, which was a much smarter, healthier strategy of creating their own products and whatnot. So with Bottle Keeper, we had 42 patents. They really wanted the patent portfolio so they could remake their own versions of our stuff. We were also a premium brand with really, really high gross margins, and they weren't able to do a whole lot of retail distribution with the Arctic price point just because the margins were too thin. Sure. So it was part higher end brand, part intellectual property. Revenue was like number 7 on the list of things they cared about. Interesting.
Yeah, times have changed.
Yeah, I know they have. I get to see it. And to your point, like, it's always easier for someone to look at someone else's stuff and quickly discern what's wrong with them. And that's like a big part of Pentane, is I can look at another company and tell you with a set of data in 45 seconds exactly what the problems are. It is so much harder when you're looking at your own business. And that's the thing. Right. I deal with that every single day, building a new company. You're 100% right on in that.
Yeah. And with Pentane, you don't even need to know what I'm selling. You don't need to know what market I'm in, what niche. Nope. All you need is the numbers. Just and math. You can determine if it's healthy, and if it's not healthy, what needs to change to make it healthy. Yeah. When you take that step back, like I said, I was helping a friend launch a online yoga YouTube channel / brand. I don't know anything about that, but the business isn't different, right? So I'm able to help her. I sell socks. She's doing online yoga, and I'm able to help her.
Yeah, totally.
Because you're looking at it from a high level, right?
Yeah. If we take a step back, looking at, and I'll give you an example of this, but like looking back at how you started this company, in that like 2015 to 2018 time range, I ask this because I get asked this question a lot on podcasts, and I think it's interesting. What would you do differently today if you were going to start that company versus how you started it then? A business is like an engine. It needs fuel to run. For consumer brands and pretty much every company on the planet, that fuel is profit. Without it, growth stalls and everything feels harder than it should be. Pentane helps you fine-tune your business and advertising so you're running at peak performance, showing you exactly what's driving your margins, your cash flow, and pricing power. No more wasted time in spreadsheets or guessing what's working, waiting until you get your P&L next month to see if it's good or bad. Just the clarity and direction you need to grow faster, smarter, and with less stress. So if you're running a consumer brand, go to pentane.com and fuel your growth today.
Would change everything and nothing at the same time.
Okay. Explain.
I didn't have an option on the inventory. I already had to talk the manufacturer down from, I forget, 1,000 or 2,000 pairs per style to 300 pairs per style. But in order to get them to agree to that, I had to order 12 styles up front, maybe even more. It might have been 500 minimum. I can't even remember at this point. I got them down quite a bit on their per unit, but had to order a year's worth, right? And for us, it wasn't a year's worth for us because at this time we were subscription only. We weren't going to have 300 or 500 subscribers in month 1, probably not in month 2. I don't think we even hit it in month 3, 4, 5, to be frank. So I was buying 12 styles, and at that time we were shipping 1 style per month. So I say in a year of inventory, realistically, it was multiple years of inventory for me.
Yeah.
But that was the only way I could get going. And thankfully, like I said earlier, like socks are a cheaper way into the menswear space than most other products. So it wasn't a crazy amount of cash up front to stock that, but it was all of the cash we had. When I launched the business in November, we had like $800 in the checking account. So it was like truly bootstrapped and truly all or nothing. I don't really know what I would have done different at the beginning. I probably would have raised capital a lot earlier, especially at the time that this was all going on in 2014, 15, 16. I probably could have gotten as good, if not better valuation, basically pre-revenue than I did 3 years in. People were just kind of throwing money at DTC brands at that time. Also, and not to take, credit away from anybody who got in earlier and was running Facebook ads in 14, 15, 16, but it was more or less put $1 in, take 10 out. So there are a lot of brands that succeeded because of that frankly likely would not have survived had they launched later. And so looking back in hindsight's 2020, if I would have raised capital earlier and I had budget to run ads and I would have run ads earlier, I probably would have gotten to where we were 3 years in 6 months, as far as revenue numbers go. But I also think that I learned so much more about what it takes to make a business work, especially when it's difficult and you don't have this home run platform, that I've made it farther by this point than I would have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. I mean, like, let's be honest. Bottle Keeper was that exact company. We started in 13. It took off in 14, 15, 16. In 14, we did 150 grand. In 15, we did 1.8 million. In 16, we did 8 million with no employees, no investors. And that was entirely because we could not spend money fast enough on Facebook.
Yeah.
The summer of 14 is when they launched their video ad platform. It changed everything because we could show the product in action, and it went bonkers. And we continue to scale. Like, the company remained healthy, but it got so freaking hard. And the fact that we didn't have to focus on building organic and really outside of those paid media channels until year 17, 18, 19, when things got a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, it made it a really challenging last couple of years when we were at 8-figure scale. Trying to support that on paid media was really difficult.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I've learned about myself over the last 10 years is that I am not good at hiring. I pick the wrong people. I bring people on at the wrong time. I overpay. And that's probably why I'm, more or less a one-man operation right now. If I would have done things differently and raised capital in 14 and got into Facebook ads in 15 and blown up, I don't know. Could have been great. Could have forced me to become good at hiring. We could have sunk the ship because I'm not good at that, right? And it would have been way too much for me to handle as a one-man team. So when I say change everything and nothing at the same time, that's kind of what I mean. I think I did so many things wrong the first 8-9 years. Frankly, I mean, I'm still doing things wrong today, still learning today. But I think that by doing all those things wrong, I learned a shitload. And I was able to kind of have an opportunity to push through a very difficult time in DTC, especially when you're building a business for 7 years, with the hope of a revenue multiple, and then that gets wiped away.
Yeah.
You got to completely, switch strategies and change more or less everything about your business. So yeah, I mean, everything and nothing at the same time. I don't know how else to put it.
I mean, that makes perfect sense with the context. I wonder, though, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, given that you're running a physical product company. If AI, we're going to go down the AI rabbit hole for a minute. If AI is going to come and disrupt in some capacity everything, in many places, literally everything. And I don't think, obviously, in like the services industry, it's not going to massively impact plumbers and electricians and construction workers and things like that. I wonder, though, how AI will influence valuations and looking back at like revenue multiples and things like that in e-commerce, because AI can do and supplement a lot of the things that we do in an e-commerce business, but obviously it can't like make the product. It can't,
right.
It's not going to store. You can use AI to supplement all the things in the process. Like, how do you look at that or think about that?
I wouldn't be surprised if within the next couple of years, AI could successfully build a tech pack for manufacturing textiles. Um, I already use it a little bit for like design inspiration. I don't use it to actually build the designs, but for inspiration on what I need to design. I think the way that it's going to play into multiples is, I mean, what's the number one cost for scaling direct consumer brands right now? It's their people, right? It's their payroll.
Yeah.
So if you can start implementing and using AI to reduce the amount of hours needed by human, then you reduce the amount of humans you need and you reduce your payroll. There are certain things that it's not going to be able to do. I mean, I don't know the future, but I would say, unlikely in the next 10, 20 years. But at the same time, it's moving so fast. Like, what do I know?
Yeah.
We use it very minimally. We use some agents for, reporting just to kind of give us a high level look at what happened yesterday, what happened last week, and why do you think it is? Why are these numbers trending in the direction that they are? But even then, it's data. It's pulling data that you can do on your own. It just needs you time on doing that. If you can cut your payroll cost by 30% on a bunch of manual stuff you're using, VAs and Upwork and contractors for, and you no longer need those people, it's a huge cost saving. So it goes directly to your bottom line. You're going to get a better valuation based off that. For a lot of these direct consumer holding companies and these PE firms that are just doing roll-ups and whatnot, if they can look and see, we've got a team of 20 and we're using a little bit of AI and, we were able to knock our team down to 15, well, then they can look at that and say, hey, if we acquire this brand and we use AI better, we can probably knock it down to 10 employees, which will save us a bunch of money. Or we only need it over here because we know what we're doing. We have this huge holding company of all these different people and systems and processes. This 10-person team, we can manage with 2. Now, you're not going to necessarily get a better valuation because they have their systems in place to be more efficient than you are. That's why they're buying you. But you might have a higher likelihood of being acquired because of that.
Earlier, you mentioned going through an inflection point around vanity metrics. Explain. I have deep personal feelings around metrics and what are vanity metrics. And
I bet you do. I mean, the biggest one being revenue growth. That's all we cared about for the first, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Of course, you want a higher ROAS and you want a lower CPA and you want a higher conversion rate and you want blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, all we cared about is, are we doubling or more revenue year over year? There was almost this like cultish feeling of acceptance if you went from that, $10,000 a month to $100,000 a month to $500,000 a month to $1 million a month, and like being able to say like, oh yeah, 7 figures a month. And that's kind of what people chased. And I think it was a combination of like, I mean, it's a vanity metric. So it's kind of a combination of the hope that you're going to get acquired for X your revenue multiple or your revenue. And also just being able to say that you built a quote unquote 7-figure brand, 8-figure brand, whatever. I don't give a shit if you're running a 8-figure brand versus 7-figure brand if the 7-figure brand has a higher EBITDA.
Yeah.
What would you rather operate? At the end of the day, it's the money that's left in your bank account, at the end of each month or the end of each year. And for 6 years, we didn't care. We wanted to more or less break even year over year and not have to pay a whole bunch of taxes and still be doubling or tripling our revenue. And we thought that was, a good path to go down. It's much easier to stay lean and profit focused from the beginning all the way through than to not focus on profit at all and then try and claw back at it.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's kind of where we're at now, or where we were 6 months ago, I should say.
Yeah. It's hard because we, like as operators, we spend so much time looking, not everybody, obviously, most of us spend a lot of time looking at data. And in those data are all these metrics. And the challenge is that every single metric, literally pick one, every single metric can be used as a vanity metric if you don't have context.
Sure.
Like $1 million in net profit is epic unless you made $200 million in revenue, and then it sucks.
Yep.
Like literally every single metric is a vanity metric without context.
Were you guys ever using ad agencies for Ballkeeper?
I ran all of the paid media through 8 million in revenue. Then we hired an internal ad, like a VP of ad or a paid media. And we did test twice taking our ad budgets to third-party agencies. Both times they were an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
And we always brought them back in-house.
Yeah, I wish we would have done that route. But the reason that I asked is because you said without context, every metric is a vanity metric. And my favorite thing about ad agencies is they onboard you with this promise of a return on ad spend or customer acquisition costs or a, whatever it is, whatever they pick.
One. Yeah.
And then month one, they don't hit that metric that they say they're focusing on, but they turn around and they say, but look, we dropped your spend by 500%, but your profit went up 12%. So you're actually making more money at the end of the day. Or, reverse. It's whatever they choose, whatever metric speaks at that time, at that point in time, at that month, that week, that reporting day, whatever it is, speaks to them being better than before you brought them on or better than your last agency. That's the one they're going to pick. And then the next month, whichever metric they chose to use that was good at the time has dropped. And now they're going to use the other metric that went up, right? So at the end of the day, that's what I'm saying. Like at the end of the day, all you should care about is your net profit.
100% agree.
And maybe a little bit about growth percentage, but it shouldn't be all we care about is double year over year. It should be, let's continue with a 8 to 15% revenue growth, and focus on our net profit number.
Yeah. I say that building a business is like putting together 1,000-piece puzzle. The challenge is that all the pieces are not equally weighted. They're not all the same size. And all of the things play a role. Like your ROAS, it does matter. It plays a role. Your conversion rate matters. Your AOV matters. Your click-through rates matter. Your impression, like all that shit matters. It just doesn't matter at the same level. It doesn't matter at the same rate. And you can crush a 10 ROAS and still be hemorrhaging money. Like I've seen that happen quite a lot, actually, because the math is not right. The systems are not right. The stuff is not right to do that. So, and like, ad agencies, some are great and some are terrible, just like doctors and lawyers and accountants. But I have it since Pentane. I have seen ad agencies shift, at least the ones that we have worked with, shift much more towards that data-driven net profit approach. And the reality is like the business has to be in a position to be able to tell the ad agency at what ROAS and ad spend equals good for them. Like what drives a 10% net margin. You can actually, need to know that. Right. And that way they're working off your metrics instead of them coming up with their own.
Yeah. Contribution margin, MER is kind of what everybody's operating on, or at least should be operating on now.
Totally.
The last two agencies we worked with are the first and only that have done any sort of forecasting, profit focus. The rest have always been, well, with your last agency, your CPA was $65, we're going to get it down to 45. Or your ROAS was 1.5, we're going to get it up to 2.5. And then they don't, and they have 110 reasons on why they didn't, and 110 reasons on what other metrics did improve and why that matters and blah, 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 blah.
But the challenge, again, last harping on this, then we'll move on. Like the challenge is that if they take your acquisition cost from 60 to 40, that's great. Unless they also cut your ad spend by 80%. Yeah. Now your business, now we're back in the place where your business is more efficient, but it's still hemorrhaging money because you're not creating enough contribution margin or contribution profit to pay for the fixed expenses. So you're still upside down. Doesn't matter. It's all then is a vanity metric out of context.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people might not realize that you kind of have to look at your revenue in buckets, what's coming from returning, what's coming from new. And if you're not, and it's different for every brand, the ratio, but if you're not bringing in enough net new customers per month, then 3 months from then, you're going to be just hemorrhaging money. But at the same time, it costs money to be acquiring these net new customers. So you're kind of burning cash up front. You have to look at the effect over 30, 60, 90, 120 days.
Yeah.
So whenever that happens and a new agency drops our spend by 80%, but tells us our net profit's up 300% for the last 14 days, I say, don't give a shit. I want to see what's going to happen over the next, 3, 6, 9 months. Not what happened in the last 7 days. Of course, what happened is important, but what that's going to affect is more important.
Yeah. The trends. All right, moving on. One of the things that I think is really important and I like to spend some time talking about are there intentionally difficult things that you build into your life, whether it's marathons or go ruck events or just like crushing your life away at the gym. Like, what are the things that you do in your life in order to build durability? Because at the beginning of this, you said that, like you firmly believe that you will get it done. And I'm honestly, I'm the exact same way. Like, there's just not even a doubt in my mind, like I'll figure it out. It's off the table. But that doesn't make the shit not hard. And it doesn't make these like big, massive swings that we experience as entrepreneurs not extremely difficult. They all have emotional stuff in them and all that. So like, what do you do and have you built into your life to sort of withstand that, to remain resilient through those massive ups and downs?
So ironically, probably 9 months to 15 months that I worked the least hours, my business was in the healthiest place. And what I was doing outside of those hours where I used to be, where I would have been working, was the gym, playing hockey, and hate to say it, meal prepping. And not meal prepping like chicken and rice and Tupperware that you eat the same thing every day, like cooking good meals that were just calculated. And my business had never been in a better place. And I never really thought about that until you just asked that question, that maybe that was part of it. Because I have kind of fallen off of that regimen in the last 6 months or so. November probably was, so about 7 months. But during that period prior to that, where that was all my life was work out, eat healthy, go play hockey, go for runs. I was constantly moving, and I was working a lot less than I had the prior 8 years. And that was like the most recent inflection point prior to the profit focus that just kind of happened. So yeah, you bring up a good point. I will tell you this, that when I was first building this thing, the first year, 2, 3, and it was nothing but work, I don't think there's ever been a less efficient founder in the world. Like, I was spending so much time on things that didn't matter because I felt obligated to. It was almost like if I'm not working or sleeping, then I'm not being productive. And so I'm like scrolling through QuickBooks 3 times a day, every day, for no reason whatsoever, except that it was only 10 p.m. and I didn't have to go to bed yet. And that's just a wildly inefficient way to build a business and a wildly terrible way to live. So I moved away from that kind of work schedule probably like 2021, 2022 maybe. And I wish I would have done it sooner. 2022, 2023 was when I really got into the, workout regimen and eating healthier and sleeping more consistently and yada, yada. And that's when everything changed for the better.
Yeah, there's so much to be learned in that. I mean, I think that anybody that's been doing it for a while goes through those cycles. God knows I did. I mean, I was the exact same. my business before this that I was in was a freaking slog. Like, you couldn't get away from it before Bottle Keeper. Yeah. And I remember in the early days of Bottle Keeper, the whole point of it was to be able to operate a business from anywhere in the world with internet. And I felt like I carried around tons, like literal metric tons of guilt if I wasn't working all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it took quite a while to get away from that.
Yeah. And the whole point of launching it was lifestyle flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Was to be able to do it and like go surf or go paddleboard or go. I mean, at the time I was living on the beach, so go and do stuff outdoors. It took a while to get around that, but it's really important.
It is. And I tend to ebb and flow a little bit.
Sure.
I go through seasons where I have this crazy good work-life balance where when I'm not working, I'm doing things that are good for me. I'm, going and hanging out with friends. I'm going on vacations. I'm going to the gym. I'm playing hockey. I'm working out. I'm going on runs, whatever. I have other times where I'm doing nothing but work. I have other times where I'm hardly working, but I'm like not using that off time correctly, just kind of laying around and being lazy. And so it's not a perfect science. You're not just gonna, some people maybe can build this, perfect little system. I'm not one of those, but I definitely, as you mentioned, like have noticed that when I'm locked in on the productive on my personal side, I'm also far more productive in far less time on my business side.
Yeah. And that to me is what work-life balance means. Like, I feel like that term or phrase has been absconded by, like either Y Combinator companies that think it's insane and there's no possibility you can ever have work-life balance if you're going to be committed. I think, who is it? Reed Hastings, Reed Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, recently did one of those, like, if you think work-life balance is what you are, then you're never going to be a successful founder thing. Yeah. It's like, okay, let's clarify that. If the work-life balance is balance your life, life first, work second, and okay, maybe, but I do think that there is a way to create a healthy balance where you actually get significantly more productive when you are doing work because you can step away from it. You have to step away from it.
there's no one way to start a business, no one way to run a business, no one way to
course.
scale a business, no one way to operate, nothing. I mean, I have friends that have started businesses and they're just so good at systems and processes that in 8 months, their business is a well-oiled machine, better than mine is after 10 years. And that allows them after 8 months to have a ton of work-life balance and flexibility because their systems work for them in the back end. They have all these little menial tasks outsourced. They only have to focus on the big picture. And that's wildly impressive to somebody like me because my brain doesn't work that way. If I could bring somebody on right now, that's what it would be, systems and operations. But at the same time, I have friends that have started businesses that have not seen the light of day in 7 years because that's their mentalities. I have to just be grind, grind, grind. Different people work different ways. For me, that balance where I have freedom and flexibility to do what I want and I spend that time not just laying around wasting it, that's when I'm at my best. The key, which I've yet to find, is how to maintain that, year round and not go through these kind of ebbs and flows.
Yeah, I think that's just part of being human. Forgive yourself of that.
Yeah.
I have the same problem. I think most people have the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. What do you anything else you want to leave us with before we step off? Where can people find you? Where can people find Southern Scholar?
Yeah, Southern Scholar. You can find southernscholar.com. Instagram is the Southern Scholar. We've got some really cool things coming this year, launching a ton of new collections and bringing back handmade silk and wool ties and pocket squares. So very excited about that. We're going to set up kind of a shop the look system on our website where you can go and kind of mix and match complementing ties, pocket squares, and ties. We also have a new website launching where you can go and sort based off of what you typically wear. So you can filter for, what goes best with a brown trouser or a blue trouser and brown shoes. So it's going to be pretty intricate, make it very easy for you to kind of see what works with your wardrobe.
Amazing. Sounds awesome. Well, thanks a ton, man. I appreciate taking the time. And thanks again. A huge thanks to our guests today. Don't forget, this is powered by Pentane Financial and Advertising Command Center for Consumer Brands. Stop what you're doing, put your phone down, walk away from the computer screen, go outside, get some air, do something hard, push your limits, get uncomfortable, become more durable and more resilient, create the stamina required to get through those entrepreneurial barriers, stay in the game for as long as you can, and we will see you next time.